welcome. Today we're going to be ranking the best fights in the Record of Ragnarok series. It's me, JP, aka Corvus, joined by my co-host,
Co-host
yeah,
Nathan.
Nathan. Tell us, Nathan, how did you first find out about this incredible series?
Record of Ragnarok.
Hmm.
Oh, it's very easy. YouTube. There's a very good content creator I did watch called The Masked Man, and that was when I first seen like a couple of videos discussing it, and I was like, "Huh, what's this about?" And I was really sold on the premise of like, this is a tournament about the greatest, I guess, warriors in the entirety of human history, and against the greatest gods across all mythologies and religion, which is such an interesting concept with just how like a lot of it obviously are based off real mythologies, religions, and the human beings are based off real historical figures. It's comparable to Fate that way, but
Don't, no, no,
also
no,
similarly
no,
to
no, no,
Fate
no, no,
with
no, no. Do
both
not
of them.
compare this to Fate. I swear to
As
God.
it's an easy reference that a lot of people would get.
I know, yeah, but like, listen, man, with how Fate's going, did you know Nikola Tesla in the Fate series is a lion? He is like a furry, an anthropomorphic furry who shoots lightning.
We're not here to talk about Fate. I just made a very simple example and comparison.
So I guess we'll start. The first fight of Record of Ragnarok, Lubu versus Thor. Now, I don't know about you, Nathan, but I think this was a dog shit fight.
It's not a dog shit fight. But right, let's go over it because technically we're counting the introduction to Ragnarok,
Yeah,
right?
so
So
Ragnarok's hyped up as this big tournament. It only comes around like every, what, thousand
not at
years?
all,
Not at all. It's so rare.
not at
It's like,
all. No, you're not you're complete. I'll pull up the wiki so I can get it exactly.
you get it
You should
exactly.
stop talking when you don't remember
I don't,
it.
no, no. It's better that way.
No, it isn't. You're just gonna start getting it incorrect, and people's gonna be mad.
I remember
Because
back
I
when,
this is a very bad thing about you talking about series is that you start going off a random headcanon. It's like, oh God.
listen, my favorite part of the Lubu fight was when he went Super Saiyan God and the Kamehameha Thor.
But yeah, see the first round.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, round one, Lubu versus Thor, and we're also counting the introduction.
Yeah.
And it is a case that humanity does get um they get, I guess, a review. They get reviewed every 10,000 years, and it was this 10,000 year cycle, or not 10,000, it's 1,000,
Yeah.
that they decided, you know what, it's they've been a disgrace, they're a waste, it is not worth it, and we are going to purge the human race
Hmm.
until you have the leader of the Valkyries use the rules of the gods against them in order to try and protect humanity by using the rule of Ragnarok, where the gods would need to compete in a tournament against humanity in a 12v12 format to see whether or not they should or should not be uh, purged, to put bluntly.
Hmm.
And that later the Valkyries being Brunhild. Now, the gods laugh at this concept being with the fact that humanity shouldn't be able to hurt gods, but Brunhild had thought ahead with the fact that as Valkyries, it is their nature to protect and aid humans, and so they would combine themselves to make weapons for the humans that they can use to play on to a certain degree, more even playing field.
Yeah.
And I
Although
think that introduction goes hard. I
it's a
think that
great
introduction
introduction,
is very good.
but my main problem is always that it's followed up by Lubu versus Thor, which is one of the most one-sided fights in the entire series. People complain,
Like,
right? Like that there wasn't like like the gods kicking the shit out of humanity fight. This was it. It was the first fight.
yeah, and that's the thing is that I think it no, but it also did a good job in my opinion because it's an arc where Lubu gets absolutely folded and bodied, but it actually uh plays into the story and pays off with round three.
You're right. Okay, so what you're saying is it's a good fight because it sets the gods up, and then
No,
they,
no, no. Like you're like it's very disappointing having it to be the first fight.
yeah,
Are you saying that?
I think it's disappointing that it's very one-sided for the first fight.
And that is the point I'm trying to make. Is that that was a very intentional decision because spoil there's no need to say spoiler,
Spoiler, because
but
it's
we're already talking. This is just a spoiler for
yeah,
the
this is a
review.
spoiler list. Anyone who
Yeah,
joins, oh
I'm too
boy,
used
they're
to Breath of the Wild talking about series, be like, oh, spoilers. But yeah, no. See with the following arc, it's meant to be that like, can humanity even do it with the aids of the Valkyries? Can humanity even touch the gods? And like we see this first arc, and it sort of feels like, oh, humanity is going to get the win. Lubu is going to fold Thor, or he's going to turn it around. Everyone's going to be so shocked and be like, oh, as in like in characters, be like,
Mhm.
oh my god, humans can do that to a god. But instead, no. Thor walks away. He's probably the least injured contestant thus far in Ragnarok.
What are you on about? He
He
broke his glove.
bodied Lubu, and granted,
Yeah,
Lubu and Thor respect each other, so that is the closest to a cool factor. And Thor enjoys that he finally has an opponent he can let loose upon. But nonetheless, Lubu gets bodied, and that breaks the human spirit. And we think, okay, humanity absolutely got bodied. Next fight, obviously, we know is a close fight, and humanity loses.
yeah,
And so it's meant to build up this reputation of like, fuck, will humanity win any fights? Where's the story going?
yeah. Although
And it pays off with round three.
I agree, yeah, that it probably the reason was to build up the gods as an opposing force. But Lubu also starts a trend, which is a pet hate of mine in the series, which is everyone losing an arm. If a character like has to suffer a severe injury, it's always an arm. Lubu
Yeah.
loses both his arms. Uh, Poseidon loses an arm. Hercules loses an arm. Shiva loses three arms. Uh, I think Kui loses an arm too, and Tesla loses an arm too. Like that is a majority of the fights. Thinking about
Yeah.
it,
Like, but right. What do you think? See, for me personally, on the tier list,
yeah,
Lubu, I think this is going to be like a Dragon Ball Fighters tier list for me, right? To be
right.
honest, maybe there's a fight I forgot about, but I think this is a B tier fight.
I think it's C tier.
It's a B tier arc.
I see my main problem, right, is that
It's a C tier fight, but I like the intro so much. It's S tier that I think it evens out to B.
you think it evens out to be. My one complaint though that drags it down mainly is that I don't think we got to see Lubu do enough. I mean, the fight is one of the shortest in the series, and the only real build up we get for Lubu is his backstory that he cut the clouds, and the only real moment that stands out for him is his ultimate attack, the clash with Mjolnir. And after that, it's
Mhm.
just over. I guess, thinking about it, you are right in that it was to show the power of the gods, but it also really annoys me the amount of times that Lubu decided to clash with the God Hammer. For someone
Yeah,
who's a brilliant tactician,
which is really interesting that like the brilliant general and tactician who's now facing an object of incredible weight, incredible force, can manipulate lightning, is meant to be so durable that he's trying to destroy his hammer.
mhm, he's using a spear to try and beat the living hammer that is growing stronger every second it's activated. I don't know, that kind of annoyed me.
Yeah.
Uh,
But I hope you can understand. Like that's the thing. Is like
okay, if
my argument of that's why I'm being optimistic. By the way, I don't
mhm,
enjoy this fight, but I'm being optimistic because I know you. You will gladly die on the hill that this is a terrible fight,
D tier fight,
and that's
like
fair.
you've talked me up to C tier. That's as far as I'm probably going to go on this because
That no, but like I think we should put it B, and that is mostly because despite the fight,
okay,
personally for me, being not amazing, I think like the introduction is so fantastic,
yeah,
and what it represents for the series, and that it is setting up the first major victory in round three. It does a fantastic job. And it also see Lubu's arc as well.
Hmm.
It also is the perfect exploration of the Valkyrie ability because he's working on that flying spear technique, his ultimate technique that could divide the skies. But he has trouble in the human limitation of human tools, you know?
Yeah.
And with the fusion of the Valkyrie, he no longer has that restriction. He can finally let loose all of his human possibility because equipment no longer hinders him.
Okay. Listen, you talked me into it. I'll put it B tier. But just know to anyone listening, if you say it's a D tier fight, I'm
Oh
with
no,
you.
I'm not. No, it's not a B tier fight.
No,
It's a
but
B tier arc.
it's a B tier arc. It's a good introduction fight, but it's not a good fight. It's
Oh no.
like really good at setting.
See if Lubu and Thor came after,
Yeah.
then no. See if we swap the order of Lubu and Adam,
Hmm.
and we had Adam's fight first, this would be a different ranking.
It would be. Yeah, yeah. I would agree there. Although
We would be
speaking,
fighting to try and get it into. Uh, Probably me and you will put in the D.
well, here's the thing, right? The Atom fight is the next fight after Lubu, and I think it does a much better job. Like as you say for introduction, Adam's meant to fight Shiva, and then last minute Zeus steps in, and I think it's a much
Hmm.
better match because of that.
I also think the story that's built up is so interesting because we build up this context of, oh, here's a man who hates the gods unlike anyone else.
Hmm.
And that's so interesting. It's like, really? And it's also, oh, I thought like Adam is built up, I think, as in like, he doesn't feel human. He's built up as being like not very human at all. He's like a mythological figure of so much weight and significance. You know, the
Hmm.
first human being built in God's image, and he hates the gods, and this is him finally getting to unleash his wrath upon them. And so we're going into the fight with that sort of context, and it's so interesting that Zeus decides, you know what, no, Shiva, you're going to hold back. I'm going to throw hands with him, and like it's a curveball into such an interesting premise going in.
It's a good thing
And
he
where
did,
the story actually goes is insane.
yeah, but also it's a good thing he did because Shiva would have got bodied by Adam.
Well, Shiva would have been wrecked by Adam's technique.
Oh yeah, definitely. And as well, I think the more interesting thing is that everyone's trying to predict why Adam is fighting in the first place, and we have
But
people.
like that context I gave, which is
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, he hits the gods. He hits the gods. And he's not, that's why I saying like, oh, he's not like a human. Because obviously the twist being is that he has the most human personality and the most human motives ever, in my opinion.
Also, as well, I think what's the exact line? What reason does a father need to
What reason
protect
does
his
a
children?
father need to protect his children?
Such a good line because you've
It
Zeus.
goes so hard.
Yep, that's exactly it though. Because Zeus is the godfather of the cosmos, but why is he fighting? He's fighting simply because he enjoys it. He has quite literally
Mm,
got no stake in this fight other than his life. That's it. If gods lose Ragnarok, they don't lose anything.
yeah, and I think that that whole twist, I really like how well done the backstory is revealing like the twist on the Garden of Eden story
Oh yes, yes.
and how like it built up that context of um like I'll do anything to protect my family. And then as we're fighting, with all these rounds in Ragnarok as well, um these stands are filled with human beings from across the world and all across history, and they will be relevant to each competitor. And for Adam's fight, it shows people of various different time periods, various different races, and also his wife Eve and his two children. But then the thing is that one of the random people from a different time period, different race, is holding a child, and the child begins crying, and that's building up this whole motif of he sees every human being that succeeds him as his family,
Hmm.
and he will do anything to protect them. He does not want them to cry, and that is like, ah, see when that line's dropped of like, what other reason does the father need to protect his children?
Yeah.
With all that build up, goes so hard.
It's
It's
also
so good.
really it's interesting as well that Adam. Adam, it's really weird, right? Because Adam losing the fight makes it more impactful. As much as you want Adam to win, it hits a lot more because he doesn't. But he brings Zeus to his knees in a battle of
Mm.
wills. Even when dead, he beats
And that's the
Zeus.
thing is the twist is that that's what I meant with the Lubu fight.
Yeah.
Lubu Lubu does Lubu gets folded, and that's like can be seen as disappointing. But him getting folded sets up so much of the future arcs, and that's why I said it should be B, is because although obviously that isn't as entertaining, it sets up this context of like, can humanity even get close to killing a god? And the next fight is it feels so even. The perfect human being, the man crafted in the image of gods versus the pinnacle of godly strength. And Zeus's design is fantastic, and his abilities are very fucking cool.
Yeah, the
And
Adamantus
so
form,
it's like,
very cool.
yeah, and it feels like, oh, Lubu lost so that Adam could succeed, and this is meant to be, oh, humanity's first victory. And the fact that like we see one final strike and we think, oh God, Zeus is going to collapse, and
Hmm.
instead we see Adam stand there defiant, but it turns out his body is dead. It stands there stiff and tense.
I also like
And
to.
that is such a shocking reveal. And it's like it teases victory in our face after the absolute L that was Lubu.
Hmm.
And we think finally humanity wins and then it's ripped from our hands. And
It's
with
all,
all that sad context of like, oh, well, we don't want him to lose, it builds up the succeeding fight.
definitely, and it's also that the case. Do you ever hear the idea of that a father should never solve his child's problems, but he should be there to help them learn as many times as it takes?
Mm,
Adam didn't need to win the fight. He just needed to show the people the way. And that's exactly what he did. He inspired hope.
hmm
S rank fight, I think we both agree on that.
Yeah, and you actually need to talk about the fight itself,
Oh, the
which
fight
is
itself is just brilliant.
the the
I
the hand on hand combat. We might as well mention these while we're going through
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, of course, of
Luby
course.
versus Thor, we did sort of mention
We did.
it's a fight of weapons of a giant massive fucking hammer versus a spear, and this
Just
was
like
a fight where it was catching hands. It was the small melee brawler versus the giant melee
I,
brawler.
I like to think of it more like
And
this. It's the old saying of fuck around and find out. Lubu chose to
was
fuck
was
around.
Zeus's ability temporary time stop,
Oh yes, yes, this one. Hmm.
which is like insane. And Adam's counteraction is that with the idea of being made in the image of a god, being in the image of perfection, he is also perfect, and he is also able to copy a god, since obviously that's what his form is meant to be, is just a copy of one.
That's got
And
to be.
with that whole like holy divine eyes that can copy anything it sees, that is so cool.
It's also, I think, like probably very insulting for the likes of Zeus if you consider his techniques being used against him by a mere mortal. It's got to be salt to a wound.
I like yeah, I think that see Adam having that sort of special power is possibly one of the most suiting, because it's just that idea of why can he copy the technique of the god? Oh, he's made in the image of one.
Yeah,
And not only that, he's eaten the apple of Eden. He has infinite knowledge. So it's like, take that L.
catch these hands.
Yeah.
Although I will
Adam,
say,
watching Eve's crying is sad as well.
actually, I was more curious how Cain and Abel ended up there, but I don't want to get talking to that because that's talking about the Bible, and there's a whole history there between those two characters. Though it does make you
They
wonder,
were
though.
younger. They were younger versions of themselves.
They were, I suppose, before
Give that
the
a
whole
pass. Give that a pass before you dig yourself into a hole.
before the whole murder thing happened. But as well, I think it's the catch to Adam's ability was really interesting. The blinding himself essentially, like overworking himself to the point of exhaustion. And I think it's blood from Zeus, if I remember correctly, just touching his eye is enough to blind
That
him.
sets it.
Yep.
That sets it off. And I
Oh,
think that what that's meant to, I think what that also represents is this idea of like the gods, right?
mhm.
Like why I was saying with Lubu's fight. he gets folded, and it presents the audience with this question: is there any possibility that humanity could ever fight on an even playing field with a god? And that's the question that we're introduced to. And then we have this fight, and we see it get so close. But the thing that killed Adam was once again human limitation.
Yep.
He was trying to copy a god, he was trying to surpass a god, but at the end of the day, things like stamina and fatigue broke him. His human body broke before he could surpass Zeus,
But there's
even
one
though
thing
he
that
was
didn't
so close
break,
to doing so.
and that was his will.
That lived on.
That lived on. Because as succession with our children, our will, they are our living will. It's very interesting in that regard for the fight. But I will say, highlight of the fight has to be when they're hyping up the Adamantus form. Like, he can't take, if he gets hit by that thing, he's dead. Zeus lands two haymakers into his face, and motherfucker grabs him by his hair to see where he is.
Mm.
That was a highlight of the
I
fight.
That's so good. I also think I love like Adam's style, which is like he knew he was fragile, and so his whole strategy was to not get hit, to dodge and parry as much as humanly possible.
Yep, indeed. Oh, what a good
That's
fight.
easily an S tier.
It is easily S tier. Our next fight, then, I
This
think
next one we should have had an S plus tier, I
we
think.
should have. This is okay. I think we both agree that this is the best fight.
Yeah, obviously rank it in front of Adam.
Well, okay, we'll rank it first in S tier, and we'll explain why it's S tier. So,
So I might as well say this to get it over and done with. This is what I meant by the first two fights build up to.
mhm,
Lubu gets folded. We wonder, can humanity ever possibly catch up? It's a very difficult fight to watch. And then we get introduced to Adam, and he is getting so close. We have so much emotional build up. We think he did actually win, and it's actually revealed that victory has been ripped out of humanity's hands, that Zeus is still alive, and that Adam died standing. And that is heartbreaking. And we wonder, can humanity actually win a single fucking fight? And the next human being selected to represent us as a species has the title of history's greatest loser, and we
I
have nothing but dread in our hearts.
and the best part is that he stepped up. It's they were trying to find someone to fight Poseidon, and Sasaki Kojiro, the madman himself, steps forward and says, "All right, I can do it."
And there's more build up as well, which also creates this sort of mysterious around Sasaki Kojiro. In terms of historically, he's a man who's not very well documented. He is known as the great rival of one of the greatest Japanese swordsmen, being Musashi Miyamoto. And so it's very interesting being like, so why, Brunhild?
Yeah,
Why, of all human beings, did you pick Sasaki Kojiro, who we know historically from the little knowledge we do that he had lost to Musashi? Why pick Kojiro over Musashi? And especially in Record of Ragnarok, where their warped interpretation of this human being is that he is actually history's greatest loser. And then the additional context that makes it even worrying is that with each human being summoned into Ragnarok, they're summoned at their absolute peak. You know,
hmm
Adam comes summoned as a young man, and Lubu is summoned as a man in his like mid to late 20s, where he has perfected his craft as a warrior and a leader of an army. And Sasaki Kojiro walks in, and he is old, gray haired, and wrinkly. And that is meant to be the peak of who he was. And that is very interesting for the audience going in.
it's also very interesting because it's the first time we kind of break the history of the character. As Sasaki himself
Mm-hmm.
never reached old age. He was a man struck down in his prime in the Musashi fight. So it's again
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see what Ragnarok's take is going to be on the character, and it's
Mm-hmm.
so cool. The fight like on the small platform in the middle of the ocean. to see him come out on his own, no one cheering, no one supporting him, everyone just confused. He has no
As
one.
well as
Mhm.
like the only people that actually think he has any possibility of entertaining Poseidon being the warriors who beat him. They don't laugh or mock him. They look on, confident in Sasaki, which makes no sense.
But I think as well, the title, as you said, of Ultimate Loser, it's so interesting what they did with Sasaki Kojiro.
Hmm.
Sasaki Kojiro is essentially,
Can I explain?
if you want, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sasaki Kojiro, history's greatest loser. The reason why he is built, he is picked, the reason why his comrades who had defeated him in history looked at him walking onto the stage and were filled with confidence that he could win. Him being someone as an old man is all because Sasaki Kojiro has a photographic memory. Every time he lost in history, when he would duel with someone, he would be pushed to his breaking point and immediately surrender so he would not be harmed. Looking for warrior after warrior, surrendering over and over and over again. But similar to sort of like Dragon Ball, where those sort of characters could play a photographic fight in their head and train through that way. That's exactly what Sasaki Kojiro could do. And after fighting someone once, he would trump them. He didn't need to fight them again because he had already surpassed them. And so, him being someone as an old man is reflecting that he had reached his peak in combat, that he had built up his catalog of information and strategy and his photographic memory to his absolute pinnacle, that he could handle the most terrifying god to fight, being Poseidon.
And Poseidon himself being built up as this image of perfection. In the manga, they go to great lengths to explain that Poseidon is the perfect god, someone who will not be trifled with, someone who does not make mistakes, someone who is in no way flawed, a god amongst gods. And it's interesting as well because during the fight, one of the things that Sasaki asks Poseidon, oh no, he doesn't ask him, sorry, he says, I pity you, doesn't he? Because Poseidon never has grown, because Poseidon has never lost. He does not
Do you
know
want
what
me to
defeat.
actually get the quote?
I actually get the quote, yeah, because I'm pretty sure he
We'll
says
talk
to him.
about other. We'll talk about other aspects of the
We'll
fight
talk about
if you
other
can.
aspects while you're getting that, but we'll talk about Sasaki's ability, and that Sasaki has lost so many times, he's able to, essentially like a supercomputer, predict his opponent's movements.
Hmm.
And during the fight, we see throughout he gets more and more used to Poseidon's fighting style. But then we also find out that Poseidon's not taking the fight seriously, because for him to
Hmm.
take it seriously would be an insult. And it's not until the very end, when Sasaki has driven him into a corner, that he decides to go all out. And by that point, it's too late. It's a perfect matchup because of the disrespect that Poseidon shows to Sasaki. It's ultimately his undoing. Because to any other god, they've respected their opponent up until this point. They've been willing to go all out. But because Poseidon wanted to maintain his image, he was so prideful and so vain and arrogant, it ultimately cost him his life.
So there's two quotes
Hmm.
to Poseidon that he says. The first one that I have here being, "Have you ever lost yourself and found you trained until the sun rose? Have you ever cried tears of gratitude for those who have made you stronger? Have you ever felt love toward your opponent in a fight to the death? The sword is our history, the hearts of idiots all across time. There's just no way that I'm losing to a guy that's never considered the hopes and dreams of others."
Damn, good
And
quote. Good,
damn,
good. Damn,
I think they hit hard.
they do. Sasaki.
And I do love watching how Poseidon, like with me explaining like the whole like photographic thing and that he collects information and that develops his strategy and how to defeat an opponent.
Hmm.
If Poseidon decided to respect his opponent and go
Yeah,
all out from the get-go, the gods would have had their third victory.
and that's the
But he
thing.
was too prideful. He
Yeah,
looked down at humanity's greatest loser, and he let Sasaki Kojiro build his info and build a photographic memory.
yeah. Like I was
It's
saying, it's also really interesting as well with the Sasaki fight. It's the first time we ever see one of the weapons break
Mhm.
as well for the Valkyries, and the implication then behind the breaking. But Sasaki, despite having a broken weapon, is able to forge on and reforge his will, which allows the Valkyrie to take on a new form in the weapon, taking
Mhm.
on dual blades. A short, I think it's the actual sword, the
It's
Musashi.
the additional blade that they would have.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't remember. Do you want me to find it?
See if you can find it. I think he uses the
I
same
have it. I
blade.
have it in equipment, I think.
I think
Um,
Musashi uses it to defeat him. I think historically, isn't that right? It's that same blade.
yeah. So it's Mono Hoshido, and that's a divine weapon in the form of Odachi, which is like a long sword. But then obviously you know yourself, it had to be reformed into Daisho, which is a set of katanas.
Yeah.
So his long sword was divided into two separate katanas.
It's also I was thinking as well. Poseidon chose the arena because we get later on in the series context that most arenas are chosen by the gods, and it's not until Jack the Ripper that we get to see a human choose the arena. But Poseidon
Mhm.
chose, like, he gave himself the biggest advantage. He put Sasaki on a small island surrounded by the ocean, and yet
An
he
ocean
still,
that he can control and freely move about
yeah,
and flood the stage with rain. Oh, and he still lost.
he quite literally took him to his home turf and law. That is the best part about it. Is he was so vain. There were so many times where he could have come out on top, but his arrogance
Mhm.
just prevented him from doing it.
And even if at the end he did realize the threat the Sasaki Code represented, and he did unleash every bit of strength he had, by that point it was too late.
And
Because
he was
like
so
Sasaki Kojiro does with every other opponent of his, he surpassed him.
exactly.
He surpassed a god, the most terrifying god.
Poseidon is also so vindictive till the end. He calls him a piece of shit while he's dying.
Do
He
you know what else is also an ironic bit of build-up I might as well think it's worth mentioning?
sure.
Is that Record of Ragnarok has a unique character that's completely fictional. It's not part of the mythology, which is Adamas, isn't
Yes.
it? Adamas being seen as the fourth brother, unofficial brother of the main
Oh, it's
trilogy of
Adamantus, I
Greek
think, actually.
gods,
Sorry to interrupt. I think
Adamantus.
Adamantus, I think it is.
Oh, that's why it's this Zeus's
Yeah,
Adamantus
Zeus's
form.
form's Adamantus, named after the
Yeah,
brother.
Adamantus. Adamantus being a fictional character, he is the unofficial fourth brother of the trilogy of divine Greek gods that control uh, Hades, Olympus, the skies, and the oceans. And Adamantus is the god of victory that Poseidon kills. So humanity's greatest loser is facing the god who killed the god of victory.
Yeah, it
It's the build up is fucking perfect.
and also as well for him to be the first to win, the underdog of underdogs to come out on top and to have people cheering for him for the first time in his
Hmm.
life. I also love at the end of the fight his line, "I could get used to
Hmm.
this winning thing."
I think yeah. Let me get it.
What
Oh,
like
his quote section's so good to be looking through.
it is because
Um,
it's he's such a humble fighter
oh,
till the end.
his line, yeah. Huh. I guess winning for once feels pretty good.
Oh God, well Viz kind of ruined that translation. If that's what they changed it to. Holy shit! I'm 90% sure it was I could get used to this winning thing. Well, listen.
Uh,
Anyway. We'll not pull hair over that. I suppose we
It's
better.
probably from the anime,
Probably it is. It's probably just a fan translation.
but no, no, no. This is the official wiki. You're
Oh, right,
looking
right,
at.
right, right.
I'm looking at the official. You could have looked at the fan
I might
translation,
have. But we'll
but
move on to the next fight. I'm so annoyed with this
mhm,
fight, simply with that Heracles has so much lore to pull from. His 12 trials, him murdering his family in a fit of rage, his
mhm,
death being betrayed by his wife in centaur blood. But they just give the
mhm.
man a fucking Pepsi and say, yeah, you're a god now.
Yeah,
And I think,
that's the thing is that see, I think the reason they do that is because Heracles is only there, and it's not Heracles. I'm calling him Hercules because you know why. You know why I'm gonna
I
only
know why
call him
you're going to call
Hercules.
him, but you're wrong.
No, 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 no. He's Hercules. He's not Heracles. If I called him Heracles, it's because they did him right.
Fair, fair, okay, fair.
So don't call him that because he
Yeah.
doesn't really deserve
I'm
it.
just going to call him Disappointment from now on, if that's okay with you. So, Disappointment
Yeah, that's
gets in.
fair. Hercules, anyways, for me, is like the only reason he exists is to serve the story of Jack the Ripper, which I think is amazing.
Oh,
So I think
yes.
like they could have done justice to both characters, both, but the main focus was only on Jack the Ripper. But it was a fantastic story, is what they're trying to tell, in my opinion.
With it,
So
though,
we might as well like like go over the light story of the arc
yeah.
first. So
So,
it's
the
like
light story is that
we
after
have
having.
the
Oh, do you mind if I
introduction
explain?
of these two warriors, and very shockingly, it's like the JP said that the humanity gets to pick the stage for once, and we see Hercules walk onto the stage and see that it is a one-to-one copy of the city of London. And as we see a dark, shadowy figure walk onto the stage, we see lyrics of London Bridge has fallen down and are finally revealed to the ultimate trickster, Jack the Ripper, with a giant pair of scissors. And that sets up what is an amazing, in terms of combat and strategy, a fantastic fight.
What I have to say is that clearly Jack the Ripper is one of the highest IQ fighters. Physically, he is one of the weakest, but he knows that. What his true strength comes from is his intellect and ability to read people. And I don't mean
Hmm.
read people as in read their character, as in physically read their emotion, thanks to his eye. It's one of his
Hmm.
innate traits is that
Hmm.
he is able to read the emotion of someone he is facing. And we get to see in the backstory how his life was essentially hell, but he
Hmm.
loved his mother and he thought his mother loved him back. But it's not until he finds out that the only reason his mother kept him alive was on the promise that a rich man would come back for them, and that rich man breaks the promise. And he
That
finally
she was
realized,
the that she was the lover of a nobleman that
yes.
would finally take them to their paradise.
And it's not until that promise is broken that he realizes, because her color never changes, she never loved him. She always hated him. And that's when he realizes that fear, as he sits there choking her out, is the only thing that people can't hide. It's beautiful
Hmm.
to him because it's the most true, most raw emotion. When you are
Hmm.
afraid, it's impossible to hide it to some extent. And the more fear creeps in and it builds up, the more it takes over.
Hmm.
And I think that's as well. He says that, doesn't it? That he tries to spend the whole fight making Hercules afraid.
Yeah, and the reason why I was saying that Hercules serves to explore Jack is that this is a fight that is made to flip a writing trope on its head, especially nowadays in fiction. Whenever we have an interesting hero story, and it's a story that's all about ideologies and conflicting personalities, what will normally happen is that a very, very strong opponent will make an argument to the hero, and the hero will fight, and the hero will win. However, after their fight, they are not the same. They have been influenced and changed by the villain, and so their ideologies are slightly tainted. This is a fight that flips that on its head. Instead of the hero winning, it's the villain winning, and that the hero has managed to argue and convince to the villain to change his ideologies. And by the end, although the villain has won the fight, the hero has changed them. And that is very interesting. It's very refreshing, in my opinion.
Definitely. And it's also interesting to have the twist of one of the most evil people in human history representing humanity in the tournament
Mhm.
of survival.
And it's very interesting because to follow that sort of trope I was talking about, and that the story flips the trope in his head,
Hmm.
is that it also plays into it with making Jack a sympathetic villain. He, yes, is a psychotic serial killer, and he does have motives through like the circumstance of his prostitute mother and how he was emotionally abused and always looked down upon and always treated harshly and never really loved and valued. And then walking on to that stage and not throwing the match, going on to that stage and gladly fighting for humanity, except he is treated harshly. Humanity is disgusted that Jack the Ripper, of all people, would walk onto stage and represent them, the most evil man alive,
And it,
and they would abuse him and throw things at him and
mhm.
pray that he would fail. This is a round that humanity wanted to lose.
That's the thing as well. When he wins, they hurl insults at him. They hurl objects at him. They don't sit there and praise him. They don't do the same way they did for Sasaki Kojiro. They are disgusted that they won. To them, it's tainted blood.
Mhm. It's
Also,
a victory that they don't want to count.
I want to just talk about this now because we've not talked about the fight itself enough. The fight is quite literally brains versus bronze in its simplistic form. Hercules spends the whole battle chasing Jack because Jack knows if he gets cornered by Hercules, it's over. Game set and done. And it's so interesting to see him try to outmaneuver him and to outsmart him. Like Nathan said earlier, he comes to the stage with these giant scissors, and he never says anything about them being his special weapon. We just assume. And in one page, they're destroyed instantly, 2 seconds into the battle. And then we find out that he was lying, that actually it's this small pouch to his side that lets him summon multiple knives to pull out anything that he needs. And then we find out he's lying
Mhm.
again, and that actually what his ability is that anything he touches gets the God Killer property. And we find this out
Mhm.
as he drops a building onto Hercules.
And cleaves off his arm.
And that's the interesting thing as well, because it highlights the intensity as well. Well, not sorry, the intensity,
Mhm.
the smartness of Jack, because he spent so long running and touching everything he came into contact with. There are so many possible weapons for him to use. He turns himself into a one-man army essentially. Although,
But and the most interesting thing is that with that whole weapon of like going from the scissors that are shattered to lying about the pockets to everything I touched is the weapon. One thing he doesn't consider is that he is going to land his final strike on Jack, being that he is barehanded and that he finally has his first window, his first opportunity to harm Jack the Ripper. The blood that was on Jack's hand also counts as a weapon,
yeah,
and it's a shocking panel seeing Jack shred his arms through the torso of Hercules and expecting to finally see fear and terror, that beautiful raw emotion he desires from Hercules in his face as he finally dies. And instead, Hercules smiles. It's
yeah,
amazing.
shows him love.
So good.
It's one he embraces him actually in his final moments as well and calls him a worthy opponent. That is the thing. It is a complete 180 to how Poseidon viewed Sasaki. Hercules loves humanity, as he said, and he was willing to fight for humanity. But the difference, because I've seen a lot of people say Hercules is a discounted Buddha, but the difference between Hercules and Buddha is honor. Hercules was honor bound as his responsibility as a god, but that still didn't mean he was going to give up on things he cared for. Buddha, meanwhile, he only cares for what he wants to do. And it's interesting in his final moments to see Hercules comfort Jack, because ironically, that's the only support he really got in the entirety of the fight. And it's from the man he is quite literally killing.
Hmm.
Although,
It's actually very sad because like by the end of that fight, his Valkyrie to a certain degree gets a better understanding of Jack. Like
mhm,
the thing that also activates the Valkyrie, which is good foreshadowing, is that he terrifies her. But
yeah,
then by the time the fight's over, she does actually get an understanding, and he finally meets one person that can accept him and treat him kindly, which is Hercules, and he kills him,
yeah, he
and he
sits there
kills him.
quite literally with his blood on his hands.
Hmm.
So I really want to put this
Oh,
in S tier. I do, but at the same time, I feel like his backstory just annoys me too much. Heracles, because
really?
see, this is the problem of putting Lubu as B tier. I like you can't put this below Lubu. That's the problem. So anything below like B, it's not happening.
Okay, right. Let's be more honest then and have it evened out.
I think
There
it.
will be very few that get lower, so I think it is fair, so we can spread out the results better. Put Lubu and see.
Thank God he's dropping down. Patch notes finally hit.
And Jack the Ripper and Hercules. It's at least an A, but I
It's an
would put
A.
it S.
It, I would love to put it S too, but I just feel like there was
But
so much.
S implies perfection
That's
from
the
both
thing.
sides.
It's just the backstory let down with Hercules. Because had it been on par, there was so much to work with. I'm so confused how they fumbled the bag with it. It is quite literally having an open net. All you need to do is kick the ball into it. And somehow they did a triple somersault deluxe and snapped their neck, missing the post. It just, I don't get it. Although, perfect in every other regard. We've been talking for an God, we've got so much to say about this, man.
We have how many fights? One, three, four, five. Five fights. We can do this
Yeah,
easily.
we can do this, but we're not getting a fire punch. I don't think. I think fire punch is off the table. Oh, this is
But
a
at the same time, this is a good discussion. I like it.
I like this too.
This is an interesting next fight.
Right, yeah, so this is one right. I think we're very divided on Raiden
Hmm.
versus Shiva.
Oh, actually, can I pull out? You start talking about. I'm gonna pull out my notes because I actually had it saved my
Oh,
rankings.
oh, perfect. So Raiden versus
I have
Shiva.
yours saved in our Snapchat messages actually, so I can pull them out.
Perfect. We get this up because I think for me, I had this fight in A rank, but for you, this was a B rank fight. This was one I think you put on par with Lubu. What this
It's like, did you like it? Didn't you?
I like this fight because not a lot of people understood what the theme was, and to me personally, the theme was shouldering responsibility. Raiden's backstory is that he was a man born with 100 muscles, and as a child, he was unable to walk, he was unable to crawl because his muscles pulverized his bones to dust. So they had to essentially, he had to find a way to seal his own strength and then learn how to walk, do everything a normal child would. But because he was
It
so
with
strong,
folded muscle. It's like it's similar to for people who've ever read Demon Slayer Mitsuri, who also has like it's muscle that's layered on top of itself.
yeah, he sealed muscle within muscle is essentially what he had to do. And because of that, he's kind of a freak of nature. And his village treats him as such until he finds the one thing that he loves, and that is sumo. And in sumo, he is not overpowered. He's not a freak. He is just a contender.
Mhm.
And we get to see him, you know, work at sumo and develop as a person, but also supporting his village back home. Because if he fails in a sumo match, he cannot give the money to his village. And his end goal, very simply, is to make his mother proud. He is a very simple character. But I think that works so
Mhm.
well with Shiva. Because Shiva, essentially in his backstory, him and a friend wanted to get to the tallest peak of the mountains. But to get to the tallest peak meant to be you had to be the greatest god. So essentially, they team up together, they go on a god kicking journey, they essentially solo everyone on the mountain, and then when they get to the end, they have to fight each other. And Shiva wins because his friend forfeits because Shiva refuses to take it seriously because he doesn't want to hurt his friend. And to that, it is the greatest disrespect to his friend. That he would rather surrender and keep his dignity intact than be given a win by Shiva. And it's because of
Mhm.
that, and because of the position Shiva holds, he is the peak. He is number one. He is at the top. He has to carry the responsibility of 151 gods, I think it is, on his back.
Yeah,
If he loses, then they've all lost. And I think that is what the fight is, the burden of responsibility.
that is a very good way of looking at it. Like because of the fact that Shiva did have to defeat everyone else
Hmm.
to be reach that peak of the mountain, but then Raiden also bearing the responsibility of the Japanese sumo community that accepted him and embraced him, but also shoulder the responsibility of his home village that he worked so hard to provide for.
And I think that's the most interesting thing about the fight is that they're two very human characters. Ironically, for what is a god versus a man, both of them have like probably the most human motives in the entire series.
It's very simple.
Yes, living up to what people perceive you as, to live up to the responsibility others have given you. And I
Hmm.
think as well, hear me out, but I think this was one of the most mismatched fights as well. But I think this was handled much better than Lubu versus Thor
Yeah.
because Raiden realistically didn't stand a chance against Shiva. Shiva had the unpredictable footwork, he had quite literally two more arms than him, and he had the
Mhm.
Inferno mode at the end. But Raiden refused to give up, he refused to bend his knees, because as you said, that would mean turning his back on the sumo community that raised him, to let down his
Mhm.
village. And he would rather die than do that. But as well, I have to ask then, do you think this fight could have presented those themes better? Because I know this one's very unpopular because people don't see any thematic relevance.
I think it's just down to interpretation. Because do you want to know what I had ranked?
Hmm.
Right. This isn't me saying that it's a bad fight when I did this ranking.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying that it is ranked poorly, but as of now, in record, where did we get an extra fight from? Why does it show
There's two
5 fights?
because Buddha
One,
versus
two, three,
Zero.
four, five.
We didn't technically
Then there's
count the Buddha fight, but Buddha technically has two fights.
oh, okay, that makes more sense. I didn't notice that. But anyways, right. Do you want to know what I have? Raiden versus Shiva as
Tell me.
seventh
Oh, you've
out of
hurt
the
my.
eighth fight.
Oh,
Out of the
oh,
eight fights, I have it as seventh,
oh.
and because a lot of it comes down to like, see a fight when I'm ranking it.
Hmm.
If it has an impact on me, I'm going to remember it. A lot of these fights I've not read in a long time. I can't. I like. The reason like you have to like let the audience like reflect on what's happened for the discussion of round four. No, sorry, not round four. Round five here, which is you have done all the talking because you enjoyed it and you remember the fight.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
need you to recap for me because it's not as memorable as any of the other fights from Record of Ragnarok for me. And I'm not saying that means it's a bad fight.
Yeah,
and see the themes. I'm really glad that you can reflect on like I loved how these are two men that are representing uh people that are sort of like family to them. You know, Shiva sees the gods that he had to overcome and he is responsible for as an extension of his family that he needs to fight and represent, as well as Raiden, who fights representation of a family in his home village and the sumo communities, and these two men clashing so they can honor their communities, as well as I love the melee physical brawls.
yeah.
I think the violence is fantastic, and there's something that's very there's much. I feel honestly melee fights are cooler,
It's
but
interesting as well. I was just
I
gonna say,
I just think all the other fights I enjoyed more.
but see, right, this to me is like
I
one of. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
No, I was
this
just gonna.
fight is one of what.
It's one of the more raw technique fights. It ultimately comes down to technique. Raiden
Hmm.
sumo versus Shiva's dance.
Hmm.
And one of the more interesting parts to me, I always thought, was essentially how, at the end of the fight, so to give a bit of context, Raiden uses Yatagarasu, which is essentially an open palm strike, and Shiva kicks through it. He takes the arm completely off. And instead of, you know, how would I put it, wallowing in his defeat, Raiden just smiles. He happily accepts that he can't do sumo anymore because he's missing the arm. And without sumo, he knows he can't beat Shiva. So he essentially forfeits in a way. And Shiva respects
Hmm.
it. He takes the head off him. But it's the one thing that changes Shiva's mindset on humanity. Because while he's leaving, he said, "You fought good for a human." No, you fought good, Raiden, whatever the surname is.
Hmm.
And it's to see that character growth as well.
Right in time on.
Time on, thank you. It's that character growth as well that we get at the end. Because we don't really have much character growth. Sasaki stays the same. He's a very humble man. Jack, we haven't seen the full repercussions yet, the ramifications of the Hercules fight, but we get to
Hmm.
see the Shiva impact. And that's that Shiva is considering now the implication of Ragnarok and what it actually means to wipe out humanity, which I think is very interesting.
Well, there is like, it is interesting
If you're gonna
because
say Thor, if you, I swear to fuck, if you're gonna say
the
Thor's character development, that man's been
no no no
watching his
no 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 no
Samsung
no no no
TV.
no
Yeah, Thor is
Thor
just.
appears once and he appears in the background I think twice in the whole series. Why did you think I was gonna say Thor?
I thought you were gonna say Thor gets character development. Motherfucker's been on his Samsung TV binging Netflix.
Thor just goes, thanks for a good fight. That's about it.
Goes back to his
But
manga if it hasn't come out.
he respected Lubu as a warrior, but
Yeah,
that's not who I was going to talk about. I was going to say, yeah, like see with the other fights that like Zeus Zeus honestly is taught to respect humanity and his opponents. He looked down at them as jokes and he thought of them as pathetic, but with killing Adam, that even he thought that as a tragedy, and
yeah,
that Adam was a great warrior, and it was the fight that taught him to respect Ragnarok, to respect his opponents, because very shockingly, right after that, his brother dies and is defeated by Sasaki Kojiro. So like they do have like changes, and as well as like the great character arc. Like I was saying, there was that whole battle of like the hero trying to change the villain's mindset with round four of Jack the Ripper versus Hercules. But
hmm,
then you are right in that Shiva really questions the morality of Ragnarok. Not Ragnarok, but rather the results that the god wants, the
yeah.
purge of humanity as a species.
I will say for this fight, to me personally, this is an A rank fight. I know that's probably gonna annoy you, but I think it's up there with
I,
Jack the Ripper.
I,
The main reason, and this, as I say, it's the responsibility theme. It's two of the most human characters brawling it out, and in the most human way possible with their fists, through techniques that they
mhm.
themselves have honed over their entire life.
Can we meet a middle ground
Oh,
and
okay.
rank it at B?
Thank God I moved
It's
Lubu down. Right, if it's B,
no, no. If we need to, we can move Lubu down to D. You know what? Because we're
fuck
spreading
Lubu.
out the fights. We're not saying it's bad, right? We're
Yeah,
saying we all right. Me and you agree that this is our least favorite fight.
yeah, 100%.
Then we can put that as the bottom of the barrel.
There he goes, right in the D tier, where you
But
belong. Know your
you
place.
understood that I thought that it was a fight that is actually quite good. But in order to spread these out more,
Yeah,
like
definitely.
that is what represents the bottom of the barrel. Sasaki Kojiro represents the top of it.
Yeah. It definitely could have been better conveyed in the themes because you definitely do have to like sit there and think about the story. It's also interesting that
And like you like the only argument you have to remember my argument, which comes down to it sets up the other fights. That's the only thing I was really doing that could defend the Lubu fight, which
yeah,
is it sets up Adam's fight really well. It sets up Sasaki Gojo's fight really well. It sets up the premises around the rest of Ragnarok. But at the end of the day, Thor and Lubu feel like an afterthought.
I was
You
also
know,
saying
they're
while you
just
were away.
tools to set up everything else.
Oh, I was saying as well while you were away. The main problem I have with the Lubu fight is that if you think about it in universe, Brunhilde knows
Mhm,
they have to win 7 fights, but yet she allows
mhm.
such a mismatch to happen. Why would you throw away a win? Why would you ever put Lubu against Thor if you know it's going to be a one-sided slaughter fest?
Wait, Brunhild knew it was a one-sided
Well, think
slaughterfest.
about it, right? Okay. She surely knew what the extent of Thor was. She surely knew what the extent of Lubu was. I mean, that's why we see her panic against people like Poseidon, or when she sits there, she analyzes her fighters to work out who has the best possible matchup. Lubu was kind of thrown to the wolves. Lubu was the water boy. He was essentially, get on up here, sport.
Maybe. Like
You know,
I'm gonna flick through, but it's like, ah,
but anyway, I do agree. Raiden's fight
it's
definitely had some elements could have been improved, but I think it's a good fight. I really do.
yeah.
Um,
What quotes does he have? He has the least quotes in the wiki. He
who?
has three quotes. So he has a quote to someone from his backstory, which is the strongest in the world is me. Except for me, in the sky and earth, there is only weak people. To Thor, he says, You, you're pretty good. And then he says to himself, I gave it everything I had. Now this right here, is what true joy is.
I'm gonna be real with you. I was more upset when his horse died than when he fucking died
Yeah.
when it comes to Lubu. But moving on to our next fight, we have Buddha versus Zero, I believe the first form is the seven karma
Like,
god.
um, the sixth fight is let me just pull out the name of
Yeah,
them.
I think it's
But I
Zero.
will get it here. It is
I haven't. Keep in mind, please don't kill us here. We haven't read this in a while.
oh no, it's just that this the title of this god is
It's the karma
okay.
god.
It's Bisha Mountain. Bisha Mountain. So
Is Bishamontan the
to start
devil?
off this arc, we go through and we see the uh, essentially the medical room. Sasaki Kojiro is recovering and enjoying a cup of tea with his Valkyrie, and we get to have this really interesting interaction with Bisha Montan, which is a series of nine gods, which is quite interesting, and they have an interaction. And we know that the next fight is meant to be Buddha, and we see Brunhild speak to Buddha. But then the thing is that we're sort of introduced to this idea of like he's very friendly with Brunhild, and despite Zeus trying to speak to him, he's not paying attention. He really doesn't actually care about what's going on. He doesn't care about the purge of humanity and about Ragnarok. And then we go on into the fight, and Heimdall introduces him, the man who alone on heaven and earth is the honored one. And he just goes and walks to the other side of the stage and says, I'm fighting for humanity now.
Yeah, he is quite literally a listen. I don't
Well,
really
the
care.
wild card
He's
of Record of Ragnarok.
if it's in his own interest, he will do it. But if it's not in his own
Hmm.
interest, you cannot make him do it, plain and simple. And that's the beauty of Buddha. Buddha, the quote, isn't it? Oh, what is it? Amongst the heavens and the earth, I am the only one, I alone,
I'm the honored one.
the honored one. Thank you. I remember Gojo saying
Yeah,
it. But
yeah.
this right is technically two fights, which I don't think is right. I personally see it
Hmm.
as one fight because Buddha doesn't really fight for the first part. He kind of sits there
Hmm.
trying to help Karma to under. Well, what's the name of Karma?
So I might as well explain this part instead of
Sure.
skipping ahead a wee bit. But you are right. It's on the tier list right now as two fights. Realistically, there's only one fight we're gonna count, which is um. Let me just get it up here in the wiki because it's just taking a wee second to load.
No
But
problem.
Hajim, Hajim is
Hajime.
basically the main fight. But there's three forms. So I initially introduced them, like I said, as Bishamonten, and Bishamonten being um, a series of nine gods, I believe, and they are part of the Buddhist pantheon. Oh, sorry, the seven lucky
Seven, yeah. I
gods.
thought it was seven. Okay.
Apologies. The seven lucky gods, and they go onto the stage, and we're sort of confused because Bishamonten is the only one listed for Ragnarok. He is the one who's been ordered to punish Buddha for defying and standing against the gods. And everyone's like, why? Why is Bishamonten being surrounded by his six other comrades? Until they fuse together to reveal that they transform into the secret eighth lucky god, the Orofuku.
Yep.
And the Orofuku is a very interesting god as he is, to be very, very blunt, the god of misfortune. He is Zero Fuku's name means zero fortune, and that he is unadulterated sadness, wrath, envy, just pain and suffering, and so many negative emotions.
But the reason for that, and we find out in the story, is that originally he was a happy god. He was essentially a child, and he went round the world curing people of their, I
Their
suppose,
misfortune,
their
by
misfortune. He,
shouldering their misfortune, by consuming those negative emotions from humanity to try and make them better and bring them fortune and joy. Hence, him being the culmination of the seven lucky gods. But
mhm.
then it also turns out that a later opponent in Ragnarok had given him a parasitic organism that was the representation of unadulterated evil, which is uh, Huzan, and that had led to Lirofuku being unable to handle the burden of responsibility of all these negative emotions, and seeing humanity not appreciate the suffering that Lirofuku went through to bring them joy had brought him to his breaking point.
Yeah, and that's essentially what caused him to snap. And it's interesting because we see two opposite characters. Buddha, who only ever does things for himself or what he deems to be right, and Zirofuku, someone who essentially lived for others. He
Hmm.
lived to make people happy, to take on their suffering so that they wouldn't have to suffer. And that led to feelings of malice and hatred. And throughout the whole fight, Buddha is essentially, he's not fighting. He's trying to open Zerofoku to the idea that maybe living for yourself isn't so selfish. And the tragedy is that when Zerofoku realizes this and begins to agree with Buddha, that's when he's overtaken by the transformation and is essentially killed.
Hmm.
And
If you mind, I'm talking about the first round here. I do really appreciate that analysis you had, which is that, like, yeah, um, the Buddha's backstory, to build up, context for going into Hujan, is that um,
Hmm.
as he was a human, he obviously people already know the story, but of him being of great royalty, that he had his life set up for him, and that he would have everything in his life planned and set up for him, and he would have an enjoyable life that he didn't really have to have much input on. But then, when speaking to his friend, before he had a chance to pass away, his friend had said how he feels conflicted, that he doesn't feel happy, that everything in his life has already been predetermined, that he is not happy with the life of royalty. And when he passes away, this leads to Buddha reevaluating everything and deciding that he no longer wants his life to be predetermined, and he goes off and he does whatever he wants. He wants anyone to do whatever they want, which conflicts with Lirofuku, like you said, who
Hmm.
he lives for everyone else. But Buddha learned that for himself to be happy, if he wants to help other people, it is because he chose to, not because he has to.
Yes, exactly.
And it's fantastic build up for the next half of the fight after Lirofuku's tragic death.
So if we're ranking this as one fight, should we hold off on ranking the zero part?
Uh, no, no, just hold off on ranking because we can't
Yeah,
do it with one fight.
we'll do. I think we'll consider
It's
this.
Buddha's story. It's Buddha's story, and Lirofuku's story carries on
Yeah.
into the Huzan fight with the climax and the seventh weapon, isn't it?
Yes. So the interesting thing about Buddha is that Buddha can see your soul. And so essentially he knows your movements before you even make them. Because in the Record of
Yeah.
Ragnarok, the soul moves first and then the body follows after. But
It's sort of like reading someone's mind.
yeah, he's essentially telepathy. He knows your next move before you even thought of it. But Zerofuku is a being without a soul. That,
Well, Huzan is a being
oh,
that
sorry.
is so evil and so warped that it is pitch black. There is nothing to read.
Yeah, and that's essentially what the fight becomes. It becomes Buddha trying to essentially survive. Because let's be honest, it was looking pretty rough for Buddha in this fight.
Oh, Round 2 was very rough, and Huzan is also an evolution on Lirofuku's technique because Lirofuku, because of the fact that he was consuming humanity's negative emotions and was burdening it, developed the technique of just unadulterated violence, that he could reshape his body to whatever weapon he wants so he can finally pour out those negative emotions. And Hujan being absolute unadulterated evil, absolute unadulterated negative emotions, could do that on a significantly larger, faster, and much more violent scale. And it's very insane to think that Buddha, who at one point was going completely unfazed and effortlessly stomping his opponent because
Unscratched.
he had his ability to read,
Hmm.
was now being bloody and beaten without his ability of foresight.
To be fair, to be fair to Buddha, he wasn't trying originally because he wanted to know if Zero was still in there. He didn't want to hurt Ujang. It's correct, isn't
Hmm.
it? I'm just gonna say evil
Yeah,
guy,
Hujan.
Ujan, because he was afraid Zero was still in there. And by killing Ujan, he would be killing Zero. But then Ujan basically reaffirms, no, I've killed Zero. There is no more Zero. And that's when he starts to fight back. But at that point, he'd already lost an eye. Like he'd taken a lot of damage.
Hmm. And not only that, but Buddha had a series of weapons that he could swap through. Let me just quickly grab the
Yeah,
name of it.
it's
Yeah.
oh, what are they called? Is it divine paths? Is that what they're referred to as? Also, quick side note: did you know Jesus Christ is in the Record of Ragnarok manga, and this is the fight he shows up in?
Yeah. No, but there's good reasons about it.
I know exactly, yeah. But I'm just saying, like, that was so funny to me. Just the surprise cameo from Jesus Christ.
It's the sixth realm staff, yes.
Six
So
round
he
stuff.
is the sixth realm staff that represent different forms of um like guardian Buddhas, the six realms of Buddha.
Hmm.
And so it's a weapon that can change its shape to whatever situation is needed it's needed for. However, Hujan is proving that there are significant limitations with it, that these weapons may not be best suited for dealing with Suzanne. And so he has to forge a seventh path, which is fantastic.
Yes. So
Seventh path being titled Zero Fuku.
yeah, because we'll just explain quickly. We touched on this slightly with the Jack fight that essentially Valkyries resonate with someone in order to become the weapon. But it's
Mhm.
interesting in regards to Buddha because Buddha essentially taught the Valkyries this technique. And during his fight against Ushan, when he's on death's door, Zero essentially comes in and he's like, "You good, bro? You want a helping hand?" And they team up together. The spirit of Zero becomes Buddha's final weapon. And because Buddha has spent so long undeterred, unshaken, it's enough to start to finally get at Urashuku that he starts to
Mhm.
kind of become afraid at the prospect of losing. Just the simple
Wait,
thought
what
of
do you call him?
losing. Oh, sorry?
Zero Fuku.
Yeah, yeah.
Who's John?
Ujan, sorry. Ujan gets, he's afraid of just the prospect of losing. It enters his mind for just a second, and it's enough for Buddha to see into his soul to predict his final movement and win the match. And
A
that,
flicker of emotion that isn't just unadulterated evil
yeah,
is enough.
exactly. I think this is an A
Um,
tier fight.
mm.
I think both parts work really nicely in telling the story of Buddha and showing us how undeterred he is as a character. He won the
What
fight.
right?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, this is a very like even fight I think was very well deserved
Yeah. My only
as
problem
well.
is Ujan.
Why is that?
I felt he was underdeveloped.
I don't think he needed to be more developed.
You think?
I think he was meant to be he worked because of the build up between the relationship of Fuku and Buddha, and how Buddha wants everyone to live freely, and with obviously Hujan like taking over his body, it's revealed that not only was Fuku living for others, but his destiny had already been predetermined thanks to a character later in the series, Beelzebub, which is quite tragic. It's
Yeah.
very tragic that it happened, but that he had no chance to live freely, to do what he wanted, and if he was kind to others, it was because he chose to, which
Yeah.
is tragic. But
It,
Hujan serves that purpose of uh, exploring the Fuku further as a character, exploring Buddha as a character, but also setting up the later antagonists of the later uh,
yeah, later
antagonist
fight.
slash god of the series, Beelzebub.
He also sets up Hades because it's his arrival that brings Hades to the stadium.
It is indeed. So it's like, I think, firstly for me, S tier fight.
Oh,
What do you, well, like, obviously, like, you would have ranked, what do you call it?
Raiden higher.
Um,
Yeah,
Raiden
but
higher. So it's like, you can obviously bring that down to, like, nah, Nathan, I can argue that it should only be A, and I'm okay with that.
no, because you see, my only nitpick.
I'm just making my opinion vocal, which is, I think it's S tier.
Yeah, no, it's because my main nitpick is just it's it's interesting, right? Because I really just want to know essentially why he was so evil. We didn't really. He was just. But I guess it works.
No, they do explain that.
Yeah. What was it again? What was
Because
his?
he was an eldritch god of hell. That is why.
Oh, yes, yes, yes,
He was
yes.
an eldritch god of hell. and the reason he was given into Zero Fuku's body is that he is the reason that so to build up in Record of Ragnarok, obviously all mythologies and religions coexist and exist at the same time, and there are things like the Bifrost, which is present, Olympus, which is present, and another thing being Hades. Hades is also combined with the idea of hell, and both of those concepts exist together. And in Record of Ragnarok, the story being that Hujan used to exist and freely roam Hades slash hell, and he is the reason why that realm is nothing but unadulterated destruction and violence. He shaped that realm and then disappeared,
Okay.
and that is part of the reason why he was given by Beelzebub secretly into Zerofuku's body because obviously a god that does nothing but absorb negative emotions would be the perfect vessel to regrow Hujan.
I will say, what is it? Thinking about it, I will give it S tier. And the main reason is simply because Buddha is such a delight as a character to watch.
That is fair.
But
That is a character that deserves a dub. Do you want me to explain the four sages quickly?
yeah, sure.
Why they appeared? Four sages,
Why
um,
Jesus cameo?
yeah, the Jesus cameo. Jesus isn't the only prominent figure because
Yeah,
the
I know.
four sages being four individuals that represent four completely different aspects of philosophy. So you have uh, Confucius, which represents Chinese philosophy, Buddha representing Indian philosophy, Socrates representing ancient Western philosophy, and then Jesus representing philosophy in the modern era. And it's very, very, very interesting. But I thought, do you know what would have been such a cool thing?
Hmm.
Jesus sits silently. He doesn't say anything. But do you know what would have been so cool?
Hmm.
Because of the fact that Buddha betrays the gods, a lot of the gods are obviously talking shit. They uh, they enjoy watching him suffer and losing to Hujan and hope for him to die. And it would have been fantastic if Jiminy Dog himself stood up and the first and only things he says in the series is he cheers on Buddha and he's like, "Come on, are you really going to lose? Is this unadulterated evil? You represent the four sages. Do you think you can lose?" Whereas him above all of heaven and earth, that is the honored one, you
Yeah.
know? And it's like it's nice this idea that the four sages try to lift up and support Buddha, that even though I think they sit in the stand as I guess part of the god side. I can't remember.
I guess
Or maybe
technically
they
they would.
represent the human side of the stand.
Yeah, but thinking about it, like I suppose they technically would qualify for both.
Oh,
I don't think it's
but
specified, but more than likely
no,
there's
because Socrates, I think all of them sat in the human stands, never mind. But
probably yeah.
it would have been cool just to see like the four sages say like he alone is the honored one. Above all of heaven and earth, he alone is the honored one. He will not lose to Hujan.
There's
And it would have been
also
cool.
as well. I liked that Buddha lost an eye. It might sound a bit weird, but I was so sick of seeing characters lose arms that at this point it was unique battle damage, and that was like, yes, I'll take it.
This and ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed that unique battle damage because
Because immediately after it, we're right back to the status quo. Let's move on to the next fight, which was Kui versus Hades. What a fight! What a good fight. So, Kui is
so
the
hot take. Uh, it's not actually a hot take.
yeah.
It actually isn't. Uh, I'll actually go through my old rankings
Oh my god.
after we're done.
Right, right. Are you gonna hit me with the this is a D tier fight. Lubu was easily better than
No,
this.
no, 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 no. It
Thank
wasn't a B tier fight, but you're like I'll save it for the end because I don't want to actually spoil my opinion. You
okay.
can, but like a lot of it comes down to see when I made that list,
Mhm.
I was ranking it in order of like numbers 1 to 8, and there are four fights that have their rankings as a draw. So like second slash third and fifth slash sixth,
Hmm.
because I just couldn't decide what I like more. And obviously one of them is being Quincy versus Hades.
What's really interesting to me is that Quan Chi is technically related to Lu Bu. Quan Chi is the first Chinese emperor, and Lu Bu himself was emperor at one point for China.
Frig off, let me look.
I believe he was
I
the
can't believe
14th.
that.
Yeah, he was the 14th emperor, I believe, Lu Bu,
I
unless
need to
my
see this.
Chinese history is off. Kui was the first ever. That's why his name isn't actually his name. It's literally the Emperor of Emperors.
Hmm.
But
No, the Flying General.
yeah, Lu Bu
He's a
was.
warlord.
Oh, he was a warlord. I could have sworn he was emperor at one point. Hang on, let me look this up. Lu Bu.
Oh, well, this is off the Record of Ragnarok wiki, so it's like,
Oh, right, so you're not on the actual history book. Chinese.
no, 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 no. On my sword, I have the Record of Ragnarok wiki open just to like get small bits of information. While
So,
you're looking up what Lubu was, let me go through the Buddha fight and see if there's any good quotes.
no, he
I think
wasn't.
that
I
we
take
should.
it back. I take it back. He was indeed a military general, politician, and warlord. I thought he was emperor at one point, but clearly I'm wrong. My apologies.
So to go through some amazing quotes that the wiki decided to list for Buddha, we have this quote to Zeus when I was saying that he was being very ignorant and not really paying attention to Zeus, which is he says, "The only one that can move me on heaven or earth is me." And then he says to the gods as he enters the arena, "If the gods won't save them, I will. And if any god gets in my way, I'll kill them." And then what else did he said?
Oh, he said he's the one who initiates the Siegfried storyline that's currently ongoing in the background, which is very
To
interesting.
Zero Fuku.
Oh, it's
Happiness ain't
happiness.
something you can give to other people. It's something you gotta attain yourself. Where there's shadow, there's light, you know? So how about it? Wanna reach enlightenment with me, bud? Which is like, oh. And then again, he says to Zero Fuku, one is truly one's own master, Zero. You gotta love yourself. And then to Hujan, you know what it takes to confront your own weakness? To fight back against your inexperience and to try and overcome it. It takes puberty. You don't have that, and that's why you're weak.
There's also as well. I love that the Buddha fight, the first part, is just him teaching Zero what happiness is. The back
Self happiness.
we've jumped back to it, but yes, it's an S tier fight. Anyway, back to the fight we were talking about. The Emperor, the kings versus kings. Who will win? I think we had this very interesting discussion as well about Ki and how his ability reflects what a good king is. Because his eyes reflect any damage he sees. So, for example, if he stabbed an opponent in the side and he was to see it with his eyes, that damage is immediately reflected back onto him. The trade off, though, is that he gets to
And
see,
not like he reflects the damage, but rather he feels that pain,
yeah,
which means that in order for him to harm his opponent, he can stab someone to death. And although Quan Chi won't die, he feels every bit of pain and agony his opponent feels. So it's very interesting in that as an emperor, instead of being a leader that makes decisions only thinking about himself and not considering the damages he does to others, Quan Chi, in his own inherent nature, is very, very, very aware of the damage he does to others.
yeah. And as well, it's very interesting to see that throughout the fight. And it gives good reason as to why he is blindfolded. It's not just an aesthetic thing, it quite literally has meaning in the fight. And then
Mm-hmm.
Hades, okay, this is going to sound a bit weird, but Hades kind of is a bit of a discount Poseidon to some extent
Mm-hmm.
in terms of design, the weapon that he uses. But what's interesting is that Hades is essentially a king with no subjects because he's literally the ruler of hell. He has no one that really, I suppose,
Like
would.
his no his being feeling like a ripoff of Poseidon is very intentional.
Yeah, him.
So Hades sees that the roster is now very lopsided towards humanity, thanks to Buddha going in, taking one fighter off of the side of the gods and putting it on the side of humanity. Which, ladies and gents, if we do the maths, it means that humanity has had 13 fighters and that gods will have 11 fighters. So Hades steps forward, frustrated at the death of his younger brother, and shoulders the responsibility that he now has an opportunity to get revenge. And
It's
it's
also
very interesting
he
with
also
that.
gets
He takes the weapon, the shattered weapon of Poseidon, and fuses it with his own.
yeah carrying his brother's will.
Hmm.
It's also kind of
And
the
that's the
first
thing. It's like,
time. Oh, sorry.
go on.
I was going to say it also tries to humanize Poseidon a tiny bit because we later find
Hmm.
out the reason why he sought perfection is simply because that's how he viewed his older brother Hades.
Indeed,
It's
that
that
his ego is the result of Hades' perfection.
yeah, and him
But the
wanting to
thing
live
is
up to
that
it.
although uh, Poseidon became so strong because he wanted to imitate his brother, Hades achieved his terrifying strength for a different mean because he wanted to protect his brothers. They show an event which is like the invasion of the Titans and the Giants, trying to destroy both Olympus and the realm of Hades, Hell, and try to sort of pin the gods between those two realms.
Hmm.
Most of the gods were in Olympus, toppling the Titans. I think the Titans are fighting in heaven, whereas the Giants remain in hell, uh, about to absolutely destroy Hades. And only one god goes to fight them, and that is Hades himself. And he demolishes them, all because of one thing, which is that's his responsibility. Of course, he was going to fight by himself. He has to protect his brothers. It's just his job as the oldest.
Yeah, exactly. That he has to be the strongest. What I will say again is very interesting is that Key's abilities. Oh, firstly, I just want to mention this. Key is arrogant. He is cocky, but he's also very level-headed. To give an example of his arrogance, he sees the entrance that Hades is going to use to enter the fight in, and he says, "No, that's my entrance now. I'm coming in there." And he essentially rolls out a carpet and takes it because,
And his carpet is held up by significant people.
yeah, exactly.
Every other previous Chinese emperor slash political leader holds up his carpet and creates a grand set of stairs for Quan Chi to step down and reach the battlefield.
Also, we have to say, his techniques. So he has four fighting styles. He has air breathing, so this air bubble that he can shoot at an opponent's chi, or is it chi or chakra?
He has I can go through the
Just to go
abilities.
through the
So
wiki
it's like
because I can't remember it
he
fully, but
has like he has uh
mhm.
he has what his eyesight is called mirror touch synesthesia, which is like I said, any pain, physical or mental, inflicted on others, uh, Quan Chi will also feel it. So even though, like I said, the example of like if he stabs someone to death and he's seen it, or if he watches someone get stabbed to death, Quan Chi feels like his flesh is being ripped apart by a blade and he has them open gaping wounds, when in actuality he doesn't. And so that developed him having an indomitable will. He also has his several martial arts. So he has air bullet projection where he can create an air bullet that, thanks to his unique eyesight, he can see weak spots in the human body through like the manipulation of ki that he can interrupt and block, which essentially shatters their defense. It's sort of like a stun attack in a fighting game, and so he has a window of opportunity to, you know, throw
Hmm.
hands. And then I'm trying to find his techniques. So he has Chi Yu, which is comprised of five different fighting styles. That's what it is.
Ah, okay.
So, um, oh my God, let me see his Chi Yu. So he has Heavenly Hand of Defense, his armor form. Mount Tai Dragon Club, which is his spear form. Tortoise Ripple, his crossbow form. White Tiger Crescent, which is his halberd form. He has Shi Huang Yan Cut, which is his sword form, and then Shi Huang Guard and Yan Cut, which was a combination of both the sword and the armor form.
Yeah, and it's
It's
also
amazing.
really interesting as well in the fight to see him switch between all the different forms.
Hmm.
What was I going to say? I
It's
think,
very interesting because he's technically a melee fighter. His Valkyrie weapon is a set of like unique gauntlets slash gloves that he can wear.
yeah,
And that is because of obviously his different forms, allowing him to replicate the fighting style of those five different weapons.
what I love as well though is that Hades isn't an idiot. We see
Hmm.
Hades adapt, and then Kui being forced to adapt to Hades' adaptations, and it leaves
Hmm.
this ever-evolving battle. But in the end, it comes back to the basic fundamental of what made the fight, which is what really works for me. So,
Hmm.
Key's air bubbles, as we've said, he can weaken any opponent's attack, and because you can't see them, you don't know where they are realistically. So what Hades
Hmm.
does is that he covers himself in blood. That way he will feel when an air bubble pops, and he knows to switch his weight on the attack. That way the attack's not weakened, and it still hits Kui with full force, and it forces him
Hmm.
to go on the defensive to the point, if I remember correctly, he loses the arm to Hades because he's put so much on the back foot. He loses his left arm. I know.
No,
My bro got disarmed. What are we gonna do? He was
I
having
never
such a
thought I'd
handy
see a
time before
Record of
that.
Ragnarok character get disarmed.
When your favorite Ragnarok character gets disarmed for the 700th time, what do we do?
I can't wait for the second fight in the series where a character doesn't get disarmed.
But it's also it's interesting because he switches
Oh
then from.
wait,
Mhm.
never mind. Zeus versus Adam.
Zeus didn't. Yeah, he didn't lose arms. Sasaki, he cut off Poseidon's arm.
So
Zero,
there's two fights, so I can't wait for the third fight where a character doesn't get disarmed.
zero. It's Zero didn't lose an arm, and that's it. Like that is like the Buddha fight. That's the only other one. Like every other fight, someone's lost an arm. Although, what was I going to say? The key fight, then the clash at the end, I love. So
Hmm.
Hades has his own ability, which is essentially he can coat his weapon in his own blood to give it. Essentially, it's a strength attack, I believe. In Gold
Hmm.
Elixir is what his blood's referred to as. But in doing so, he unintentionally made his weapon a living thing, which means it can be affected by the air bubbles. So in the end, we get this climactic clash as both emperors put everything they have into it. And to see Key come out victorious, I gotta say, it was surprising. I thought the man was
Okay.
done. I thought it was
I,
written in the starry eyes he had that that man was dead.
I think like it feels like they have so perfectly set up Hades for revenge.
Yeah,
And granted, I'm not saying that that means like it's unsatisfying that he lost. It's a very pleasant surprise, like Quan Chi won, but a surprise nonetheless.
yeah.
It is insane.
And then following on from it, I think, well, to see the ramifications of Key's fight, Key, no one expected him to win. That's the thing. Against the gods, everyone knew that, well, everyone thought Hades is the older brother. If Zeus
Hmm.
won, Hades is going to win. And to
Hmm.
actually see that, like, I thought he was done, as I say. Though I can't think of Key's backstory because Key, who was the woman in this again? the big booba lady.
Oh, uh, I'll get that up in the wiki, but I'll go. I think we explained Haley's backstory. I'll quickly go through his. But Quan Shi Huang, he is from Chinese royalty, and I believe his the previous ruler. And not only that, Quan Shi Huang, might I add, is sort of like I like he his father had a child with a mistress from another country, and so although he does have a right to the throne, he it has weird context. I can't remember from the get go, but that meant that he was in foreign territory and raised until he was meant to inherit that throne, and he was looked after by a member of what do you call it?
Hmm.
A different a bodyguard from that other territory that would have hated him for his simple existence. I'm very sorry. I'm trying to find this woman's name. My
Big
goodness,
booba lady.
where is her name? I'm finding Booba Lady.
Just call her Big Booba Lady. It gets the point
Her
across
name.
pretty freely. Just the Big Booba Lady that's not Aphrodite. There. Narrows it down infinitely. Uh, though I will say,
Oh, Lady the Hoe.
okay, there you
And yeah, even though like she was from this foreign territory, she was forced to look after him. She actually did it with the intention of killing him and making him suffer. But instead, she realized that Quan Chi is a different person, that he is a kind boy, and that he feels so much responsibility for the actions of others that he has no influence on, and that is reflecting in his own ability. And he accepts that as that is my inherent curse. That is the reason I suffer from the sight of others suffering is very simply to pay for what my family has done and for my existence. And so she tries to teach him kindness to no longer burden himself with that responsibility. She gives him his blindfold and tries to tell him to be a kind leader, a charming leader who will allow his country to grow prosperous,
Man had the biggest glow up in
prosperous as
anime
he said.
history. He went from a crying, sniveling child to a man who beat a demon god with his bare hands in 5 days.
Unfortunately, that is the best description of him.
Yeah, man went from soy boy to Chad through puberty. Though, I will say, I think it was really cool to have the idea of a royal character or someone in high power understand the pain of the people. As you've said,
Mhm.
it is a common trope to have the rich emperor to have people suffer at the hands of someone in higher power. But you quite literally have a ruler who will always feel the impact of his actions because he will feel
That
the same pain.
he feels their pain. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's both whether it be psychological or physical.
indeed. For ranking
Mm.
though, I think this fight is an A rank. I think it's above uh, Hercules, but the one reason why I don't think it's an S rank fight, it felt
Is
really
that he's
weird why Hades took out his final move. This is something I've still been trying to work out because he was never truly backed into a corner.
uh, yeah. I think it's a very interesting move as well. I I think see the I think both characters are just really cool, right?
Hmm.
But when we look at the S rank fights, right? A lot of it has very cool moments for one character that allows the audience to pop off, with all that build up from rounds 1 to 2 and all that loss and all that sadness and the the fact that everyone looks down at him and has no confidence in humanity's greatest loser, not him winning, that he wins nonetheless. It's a perfect story because of as well as Poseidon's pride, his downfall. Zeus winning is tragic. It's perfect build up, and it sets up like how ruthless the gods are. It sets up the fear for the Sasaki Kojiro fight. And Adam, you just gotta love him.
Mm.
Buddha, the fact that he is a free spirit, he always tried to believe in Fuku, and that he kills the definition of raw, unadulterated evil is perfect. But like I feel like Quan Chi versus Hades is missing something. That insane pop off moment that I will always remember.
I think the problem is that they're not too contrasting enough. They're both two kind kings. I think for it really to have
Yeah,
worked, they should have made Hades a corrupt emperor or something.
that reflected the opposing force, you know?
I think
I think
maybe,
that better suits. I think the fact that Hades as well is such a sympathetic villain, like both of them guys liked each other,
mhm.
They were like, oh, you're a cool emperor that's nice to his people. You're a good emperor that looks after his family,
Do you know what they
you
should have
know?
done? They should have done duty versus family. Do you put your family first or your duty as a king first? Because Hades obviously put his family first.
hmm
And to see that, that would have been an interesting take. I think it's a
Because
high.
for Quan Chi,
Mhm.
his people is his family.
Exactly, yes. Because he is their ruler, they turn to him.
hmm
I think
But
personally,
Hades rules no one.
yeah, and that's the biggest problem. We don't see really Hades as a ruler. I think it's high A rank. I think it's higher than Hercules. I don't know what you think.
Personally, for me, I would actually rank it than Hercules. But
Oh,
like, I
really?
also got to dictate uh, some movements in like your rankings that were higher, so I don't mind you putting it below.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you feel that way, then go do it.
Hmm. Oh, I'm thinking on it. Thinking on it. I really am. No, I think personally,
What looks right to you? What looks right to you?
this looks better to me because Heracles, what they did to his backstory, I will never forgive. It's just out the door. Anyway,
That's fair. At the end of
uh,
the day, this isn't an official ranking. This is our opinions and
hey
us trying
guys,
to reach middle ground in
just
them
remember,
opinions.
opinions are like assholes. Some of them are full of shit. So if you believe my opinion is absolutely trash, feel free to bash me at Twitter. But just know, I won't be
I,
listening. Anyway, moving
I
on.
thought you were going to go for the full saying, which is every
What?
everyone has them, and all of them are full of shit.
Oh no, I did that. I went for that. Oh no,
Yeah,
oh
but you
right.
forgot the everyone has
Yeah,
them line. You just
don't
skip
worry.
straight to hey, all of them are full of shit. Just straight to the point.
It's like baking a cake and I fucking forgot like the most basic ingredient. You need egg.
You forgot the
I took
fucking milk.
got my milk, my sugar, my whisk, fucking beat it up, threw it in the oven. I was surprised when I got brownies. Okay, this next fight is interesting,
Finally.
and our final fight for the ranking. I personally, I'll let you speak on this one, but my personal take when this fight was ongoing in the manga, the most recent one to conclude, I didn't like it, and you can attest that I did not
Initially,
like at the start Tesla versus Beelzebub.
whereas I actually was enjoying
Hmm.
it. So this is a really interesting fight. So like we have all these different combatants that reflect a lot of different styles, but there is overlap. So like you got the long sword, uh, Japanese sword style, and then the mid slash short length sword, Japanese sword style is used by Sasaki Kojiro throughout his fight. You have two spearmen in the form of, well, uh, yeah, we have two spearmen in the form of Poseidon and Hades. We have the halberd used by Lubu. We have the hammer used by uh, Thor. We've got melee combatants Zeus and Adam, and so we have a variety of different styles. But then we have the next contestant, Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies. or in some interpretations, the literal fucking devil. And his opponent is the man who represents a spark of hope and imagination, despite how dark the world seems, with Nikola Tesla. The world's greatest sorcerer is what he's titled as. And his fighting style is so unique. So Beelzebub has a staff that produces various different vibrations depending on the hand that is touching the staff. Nikola Tesla plays back in black and suits up into a battle suit. So the reason history's greatest inventor is selected is that we enter the scene before the fight, and it is filled with some of history's greatest scientists. We have like Einstein, possibly Schopenhauer, Mary Curie, and then we see the man who isn't exhausted, who is still working away, and is finally completing his formula, and it is Nikola Tesla. And that formula is what he is using to plan out the formation of his Valkyrie weapon, which is a mechanized battle suit. And that is what he's bringing in battle. And it is absolutely insane. And it sets up it opens the door to so much possibility. This was going to be the most unique and weirdest fight. And it was the most unique and weirdest fight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it's the most unique fight. And one of the main reasons for it is Tesla himself. Tesla is not a fighter. Compared to everyone else on this list who has had some level of combat experience, Tesla is the first who's stepping into it for the first time. And
Mhm.
again, I really like with the armor, it portrays a sense of childishness, you know, immaturity and experience. It's nearly
But
something.
at the same time,
Mhm.
bright optimism, despite
Exactly.
that fact.
The optimism. It's that childlike wonder, nearly. That,
And
never-ending joy, hope, optimism.
and that's what sets up the theme of the fights. Because opposing to that, the Lord of the Flies, the devil, the reason why um, Beelzebub gave Hajun to the Urafuku was simply because he wanted to find an opponent that could kill him.
Hmm.
Beelzebub wants to find someone out there that can kill him. And the reason why Beelzebub, despite all that build-up, doesn't go next after Hades, and the reason he's watching Hades fight is because Hades plays a very crucial role in his backstory. So Beelzebub is a god that cannot be close to anyone. Anyone who gets close to him suffers and dies. And it turns out that is because, as a god, like I said, he is not only the Lord of the Flies, he is actually the literal devil, and he will kill and hurt anyone that gets too close to him. And he finds it, and he's eventually cursed by one of his friends after he realizes that he is the devil and he wants to kill himself. He doesn't want to exist. One of his friends curses him so that he won't be able to kill himself, that he would live forever. And he searches for an opponent, even in the greatest depths of hell, and faces Hades. And although he doesn't get what he wants, Hades tries to give him a new purpose, but he reluctantly accepts that. He still searches for that one person that can kill him. But after seeing Hades fight for his brothers, Beelzebub doesn't go into this fight wanting to kill himself, but rather trying to honor his friend, despite being the literal embodiment of despair and hopelessness, versus a man who completely opposes him, Nikola Tesla, who represents optimism and hope,
It's quite literally a man who's stuck living in the past, who can't get over his mistakes, versus a man
versus a
who
man
always,
who only looks forward.
yeah, in the future. And the winner of the fight will be the man who lives in the present.
Hmm.
That is the beauty of the fight. It is quite literally, both of them are flawed. And again, it's interesting to see that Beelzebub is the black sheep of the gods. When he comes out, he essentially gets the same welcome as Jack the Ripper. Unease,
Hmm.
tension. And
Uncomfort.
yeah, it's really interesting to see as well throughout the fight. What I really thought, and this is what really annoyed me about the fight originally, was how Tesla fought. He
Mhm.
swung big punches. He spoke to his opponent. He told them everything he was doing. Until you sit down and you think about it, that Tesla's not really here to fight. He's simply here to push forward innovation, to show what humanity is capable of when pushed into a corner. And throughout the fight, we get to see different contraptions. We get to see the Tesla coils, teleportation, the Tesla cage, all these different inventions that he's come up with. And he keeps trying to innovate and improve on them throughout the fight. Oh,
And that is amazing. That
it
I think
is.
that is absolutely fantastic. It's very, very interesting. Like when you described him earlier, I did really find that so funny. That he's going out, he's brand new to the scene, to fighting. He, yes, like I said, he is optimism and hope, but he's also like an ignorant child in that he only looks forward. He tries to ignore everything negative in the past. And that sort of reflects his childhood, where his backstory is very simply that he did have an older brother who was a great inventor, and his older brother was trying to work on a project to construct a windmill. And as he was working on it, he unfortunately died and left his project incomplete. It didn't work. And when he was trying to fix it, he passed away. So Nikola Tesla decided to work hard and try to carry on in his brother's footsteps and be optimistic and to finally complete his brother's dream, his quest to finish that windmill. And he does it. And that sort of explains his personality of why he tries to leave the past in the past, to look forward and to overcome these challenges and difficulties. And with that whole like uh, prison barrier that he creates, he said, "I can grab the quote,"
Hmm.
and it is such a great one. If you don't mind
Yes, of course, the Tesla quote.
taking this moment, the
But
Tesla quote is so good.
while you're just going to talk about that, I also want to talk about the fact the one gripe I have with this fight is that Satan never appeared. Satan is hyped up in Beelzebub's backstory as being a separate entity entirely, almost like a personality locked deep within him. And
Hmm.
it only triggers when Beelzebub loves something, when he admits it. When he admitted that he loved his friends, Satan came out and ripped their hearts out. So to not see Satan in the fight was kind of disappointing, but I think it also makes sense in that he's starting to accept himself more. That the idea of Satan and Beelzebub being two separate entities is no longer what he's thinking, and more so that they are one, accepting the two halves of himself to live in the moment.
And I think what I love about this fight is it again sort of reflects like these are characters with two conflicting ideologies, similar to Jack the Ripper versus uh, Hercules, or Sasaki versus Poseidon, which is, and also Zero Hujan versus Beta, which is that it is optimism, trying to look forward and to live in the now and look forward to the future versus Beelzebub, who is negative and miserable and only focuses about his path. And this is the quote I wanted to say,
Hmm.
which also reflects his optimism, which is in this 9.63 by 9.63 meter world, you are no god. I am.
Oh God, that's a write that one on the tombstone.
That goes hard.
That
Do
goes
you want me to
really
go
hard.
through his other quotes?
I love his final quote at the end when the battle's over. Can you get it?
I love how as well, like the thing that gets him to try and achieve the strength of a god is his physics,
Yeah.
is a human subject that the gods can't understand. They call him history's greatest sorcerer because they can't understand what he is doing. They see it as pointless, as foolish, but he explains it very simply as what others call God, I called the laws of physics. And
Yeah,
then since like
science, bitch.
yeah, but like he's not going to let that hold him down. And thankfully the Valkyries let him push past the limitations of his time period, which is that he was ahead of his time, that he could achieve strength that was on par with godhood, but he was he was restricted by the limitations of
His
his
time.
current day technology and current day resources and accessibility. And so it's insane. And even the Tesla coil teleportation technique he creates, that actually in the world of Record of Ragnarok was a project that he conceptualized, but he never got to work on because he was ahead of his time. It was a project that was later worked on and later tested long after his death,
It's
which is like
also
so interesting.
it's funny, isn't it, in his final moments when Beelzebub wins the fight. It's such a cool moment. Tesla goes on the offensive, and he can use three Tesla coils. He's used two at this point, but they allow for instant teleportation or an instant burst in strength. And in
And
order to,
it's like
oh sorry,
it represents as well like the life of the Valkyrie, that these three charges to unleash a super strong attack, every time he accidentally uses one, he's killing his Valkyrie. So to use all three would kill her,
yeah.
would kill him.
So in order to compensate for this, when he uses his final charge, instead of teleporting himself fully, he only teleports his right arm. And it's such a shocking moment because even Beelzebub is taken aback by what's happening, only to see the arm suddenly appear behind him to try and block it, only to see Tesla swinging with his left hand. He created the ultimate pincher attack, but unfortunately, Beelzebub is able to counter it, and he pierces Tesla's heart. But Tesla doesn't say anything. He doesn't look disappointed. He's just working out how he could have innovated better on the attack. His exact words are, "Oh man, I really thought that was going to work." He's already thinking of how he could have improved on it. It's not that he's accepted his death, because even in death, people will carry on with his work. That is the beauty of it.
Uh,
The future of humanity to keep pushing forward, to learn from our mistakes.
you want me to go some through another
Hit me.
very relevant Tesla quote for this moment?
Hit me.
He says to Beelzebub, "The end? No, none. Nine? I reject that. We have no end. We are forever." And another very relevant quote is he says to his brother Dean Tatla, "It's okay if it fails, because even if it fails, it'll mean you'll discover something new. It's exactly because of failure that humanity is able to evolve.
God damn, what a guy.
Brother, always the warrior, but it's okay. As long as science continues to grow and flourish, humanity will never die."
I started as a Tesla hater, and by the end of it, I was a Tesla fan, man. I was huffing the hopium and the copium that this man was going to come out of this fight unscathed, but god damn it.
His final quote is, "Humanity, keep looking forward. Humanity, never stop moving. Humanity, 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 continue to progress."
Oh, god damn, man.
God damn it.
He is like
I
he's
love
the
that.
Atom character. He really is like another Atom. He steps up,
Which is that
he
he
puffs his
died,
chest.
but it feels like a victory.
That's also as well, it doesn't feel like Beelzebub won because he just gets a few cheers from his comrades. But at the end of the day, he still lost Hades. He lost his closest friend. But at least now he's willing to live his life. He's not trying to throw it away. That is the only thing. But at the
Hmm.
end, it's Tesla who inspires people to keep pushing forward. And even in his defeat, he knows that Ragnarok, in his own way, we don't know what's going to happen because the series is still ongoing. But he is confident that Ragnarok is not going to happen.
Hmm.
So
Oh, it's so good.
here's the problem now because I love this fight, but it's an S tier fight. But where in the S tier does it go?
where in the S tier it goes.
Yeah.
Right. If you were to go over it, what are your emotions? What do you feel looking at that is the right? We know that Sasaki Koji's the best fight.
Yeah, it's staying there. I kind of like it more than the Adam and Zeus fight. And the reason for that is because Adam was gifted his abilities, whereas Tesla improved,
Nikola Tesla did everything.
he innovated on everything that was given to him, everything that came before him to make what he is now.
And I
He,
love how like see with Sasaki Kojiro.
mhm.
Sasaki Kojiro, oh, what's your Valkyrie weapon? It's my sword. That's it.
Yeah, it
That's it.
beautiful in simplicity.
He's so simplistic, and he's granted Sasaki Kojiro has his ability to sort of procedurally generate fights in his mind and train and his photographic memory to perfect himself. Whereas Nikola Tesla is just raw, unadulterated optimism, hope, and intelligence that he forged by himself
It's interesting as well that he fights Satan, one of the darkest entities in history, versus one of the
versus the
brightest
brightest
spark.
human being.
Yeah, quite literally. Incentive, optimism, and intelligence.
It's so sad that like
What do you think now? I have to ask this. Do you think it is above the Adam fight?
I think I would actually put it last on the S tier,
You'd put it
and I would
okay.
be willing to compromise
Hmm.
and have it rank higher than Buddha if you wanted. And the only
I want to hear
reason that
your
I think
reasoning.
that is because of Satan. I feel like they should have maybe elaborated that and maybe have Beelzebub tap into that, and that like he has
Yeah,
grown to appreciate and look up at Tesla, which I think that's what I wanted. I wanted Beelzebub. He does change at the end of the fight, which is also why I have that frustration. And it's just this idea of like you're building up Satan in the backstory that this is a thing that comes out whenever Beelzebub grows too attached. And I want it to be that Beelzebub looks up to Tesla, that he actually begins to feel optimistic. And so uh, he realizes this and he consciously chooses to tap into that, satanic side of his
yeah.
and to destroy that before he gets too close to Tesla and that he changes his mindset again. And that's the thing is that like I still wanted the same result where Hades tries to rescue a Beelzebub, but like the weight that Beelzebub bears is too much for Hades to save him by himself. And the man that comes to grab Beelzebub's other hand and pulls him up alongside Hades is Nikola Tesla.
It's ironic that Tesla was the light in the dark that made him reflect on his life and made him change
Mhm.
his ways. Though I will
Yeah.
say, it is annoying that Satan didn't come up because we were talking about this fight while it was happening. And
Mhm.
what I thought was going to happen was that Tesla or Beelzebub was going to fall in love with the idea of Tesla, a man who will always push forward, and that's when
Mhm.
Satan would happen. We didn't get that.
Yeah.
The closest we got to Satan was the blackout ability, which was just
Mhm.
essentially a big bomb. Let's be honest. I
Yeah.
think my main gripe with the fight, it might sound a bit weird, but I really feel like towards the end of the fight, it really felt like it wanted to leave the door open for Satan, but then just decided not
Mhm.
to.
I thought that like with one chapter he was finally going to, and I didn't want it to be like, oh, it's a brand new character, but rather I wanted Beelzebub because of his, the fact that he grows up and he matures in his backstory, that he realizes that this is a part of him that he needs to conquer. And that's why I was thinking like if I wanted him to do anything, he himself acknowledges that Nikola Tesla's words are unfortunately getting through to him, and it's affecting his fighting ability, if that makes sense. And not
Yeah,
like he he is starting to be convinced that humanity actually deserves to win, and he feels like he's betraying his friend uh, Hades, and so he actively chooses to unleash Satan to,
yeah,
kill Nikola Tesla, so his heart doesn't change, so that he can honor his friend Hades. And that's the thing. At the end of the day, he's doing it. He's trying to quell. He's trying to destroy Nikola Tesla and not change. Uh, but once again, he's doing it because he cares about someone. He cares about Hades. Hades was his friend, you know? So in
yeah.
a way, it's still hypocritical, but he's also still looking at the past
But
instead of trying to move on from that.
do you know what he is? He's a much more interesting character than whoever the hell this guy was. Let's go, baby, Bob Buddha. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair placement. I really
I
do.
I'm glad that we very unnecessarily moved uh Lubu and Thor to D tier.
I love how there's just a gap of seed here. This is how good this series is. If you have not picked up Record of Ragnarok, yes, I've seen the 7 people who've been sitting here and coming in and out. If you have not picked up this series, it is a fantastic series. We have got half of the fights in S tier. That speaks to how good the show has been. And the manga. The show's awful. Do not watch the show. Uh, I'm really
Just go to this lovely little website called Manga.
yeah, and
You just read off Mangadex, read every damn chapter. You will love it to bits. It's a seinen series. It releases a chapter every month. Each chapter is 50 pages long, and thus far, I think we're just about approaching 90 chapters. So
yeah, it's so good.
you better get on this.
Can I just say, by the way, I really hate that Shiva and Raiden follows up from it. It just pains me because it's such a good fight. This is such a good fight, but this shit here. If I could like add an additional like
Can
three
we
lines,
move up Lubu and Thor to C tier?
I don't know, man. You're gonna kill me. You're gonna kill me. You want it in C tier?
Then don't do it.
Okay, we'll take it to C tier. You get C tier.
Because I actually don't think it's actually like that bad. It's just that we were creating that space so we could try to spread the fights out more, but instead we put half the fights in F tier.
I like it. We just had the discussion though. Like, yeah, but like they're peak fiction. What can we do? I love how we also had the fire
Like,
punch.
see if do you know what? Do you know what
Yeah.
I think I actually should have done?
What?
All right, let's fix this. Let's fix this. So we
Okay.
think there's a clear divide between Adam and oh no, don't do it. We believe there's a clear divide between Sasaki Kodra and Adam versus Nikola Tesla and Buddha, which is that Nikola Tesla and Buddha's fights both have like slight flaws to them.
Yeah.
Okay, slight rearrangement. Move Lubu and Thor down to D. Shiva and Raiden to C. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You get me. You get
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
straight away. Good man.
There we
This
go.
this is the final. This is the final tier list.
Okay.
Granted,
Well, Nathan.
we think the fights are far more fantastic, but it
Yeah.
feels like there's a clear division in the tiers.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a fair tier list. Uh, how did Raiden get up there? That's crazy. Oh, but better fix that.
I can't wait for you to send this clip to the friggin' subreddit.